Harry says he regrets not opening up sooner about the emotional impact of his mother's death and the importance of talking through problems.
It's okay to suffer, but as long as you talk about it, it's not weakness. Weakness is having a problem and not recognising it and not solving that problem.
Plus, it's the world's biggest classical music festival, the BBC Proms, and this year's focus is the cello. We hear from a musician taking on one of the most important works. Hello and welcome. Officials in the German state of Bavaria say that a man who blew himself up outside a music festival appears to have sworn allegiance to the so-called Islamic State group. Well, the attack happened late on Sunday in the southern city of Ansbach. The man, an asylum seeker from Syria, detonated his explosives outside a wine bar just after he'd been refused admission to the concert. 15 people were wounded in the blast. Chris Buckler is at Ansbach for us.
In a courtyard of one of Bavaria's most picturesque towns is the chalk outline of a suicide bomber. And the drinks abandoned by people when he blew himself up. He had been stopped from security from walking into a music festival. This square was packed with people. He detonated the bomb, which was hidden in a rucksack just outside its gates.
I ran back towards the concert entrance and I saw one older gentleman laying on the floor with blood on his head. And I was able to push past the security who were trying to tell me to go away. I said, my sister's still in there, I need to go in there. I think I heard that there were 6 or 7 people on the floor that needed help.
The explosion caused panic in a country already on edge. The last week in Germany has seen a mass shooting in Munich, a machete attack, and a teenage asylum seeker injure 5 people on a train with an axe. And this bombing, like the last of those recent attacks, has been linked to the so-called Islamic State terror group.
Als Video festgestellt worden.
On the bomber's mobile phone, there's a video of him issuing an attack threat in Arabic, for which we've now received a first translation. According to this, he pledges in the name of Allah his allegiance to the well-known IS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and expressly announces an act of revenge against the Germans.
The bomber was a Syrian refugee with mental health problems. At the temporary accommodation where he was staying, detectives found more bomb-making material. He'd recently been told that he was being deported to Bulgaria, where he'd been granted asylum.
ISIS, you know ISIS, right? He always said that, no, I'm not with them, I don't like them, and such stuff. But I think he has some issues.
The German government has made a point of welcoming refugees from troubled countries. But in the conservative and mainly Christian state of Bavaria, unease is growing with the numbers, and that's partly because of security.
I think it's good that Germany do this, to take these guys in our country and give them a safer life, but if this more time happens like this one here, then sorry that I'm saying this, but it needs to stop now.
In Ansbach, there is sympathy and help for asylum seekers. But even among those who have fled countries like Syria, there are concerns. He says in the future you have to be careful when you welcome everybody, because some are messed up and have psychological problems, so there have to be some controls. As police search through the debris of the bombing, detectives will continue to look for the reason he killed himself, and so nearly killed others. Chris Buckler, BBC News, Ansbach.
So, are there connections between these attacks in Germany and others, such as the one in Nice, in which 84 people were killed by a truck? Our security correspondent is Frank Gardner.
You've got 3 instances, including Nice, where so-called Islamic State has claimed that this is a soldier of their caliphate who's carried it out. In other instances, it appears to be non-political. But the one common thread is that mental illness, unfortunately, is playing a part here. And this is in no way to stigmatise people who've got mental illness. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of 1% who get preyed on and exploited by terrorist groups to give them a broader cause, but it is a factor. So in the case of Nice, for example, you had the father showing off the psychiatric treatment records that his son was having prior to so-called Islamic State, saying that they did it. And in the case of at least one, perhaps two or more of the German attacks, you've got a history of psychiatric illness. And people I've been speaking to today who are involved in forensic psychiatry are saying that more attention needs to be paid to people who've got problems, who are disturbed, so that they don't go on to create, to commit these kind of things. That's not in any way to create some kind of witch hunt. It's more about caring more for people who've got problems.
Frank Gardner there. Well, what has been the reaction in Germany to this series of attacks? Daniel Dillon-Burma is the foreign and security correspondent for the German newspaper Die Welt. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure lots of different reactions, but after this spate of attacks, can you sum up the mood in Germany for me?
Well, I would say at the moment it's confused and concerned. On the one hand, we're trying to see what is actually the nature of this series of attack, how much of the psychological momentum that Frank Gardner just hinted at is part of that, and how far Germany is becoming a target for IS now. And on the other hand, there is a strong sense of concern that this string of attacks could cause a backlash against the policy of Angela Merkel welcoming refugees here.
How well equipped are the security services in Germany to deal with this threat?
Well, in the past years, they were very well equipped. And if you look at the profound confusion and sense of insecurity in Germany now, you have to remember that we didn't have any major terrorist attacks in the past years. We didn't have any kind of Madrid attacks or the attacks you had in London on the underground. That didn't happen here, and that seemed to be partly due to the good work that German security agencies have done here. Another part would have been that the Muslim community and the problems here are different from other countries. But we are now seeing, and I think this is the main concern security-wise, is that the large influx of refugees, the large influx of people we have seen since last summer, you couldn't possibly check all those people, and you couldn't possibly follow those people for such a long time, like the case in Ansbach, who has been here for 2 years and has come under growing distress, it seems.
So what is the response of the authorities, of the security establishment and of the government? Because, as you say, we've seen already anger towards Merkel's policy of just having this open door policy to people who they had no idea who they were at the end of the day. And many of those people will have understandable psychological problems. What should Germany do now, do you think? What are the voices now pushing forward in terms of what Germany and other countries can do?
Well, there were usually the calls for a broader security cooperation. We will hear these two now. Of course, the security agencies in Germany are trying to show that they are on high alert, that they're trying to do an even better job. And if you ask for the general line of the government, Angela Merkel is trying to show that she's not fundamentally changing a line. And I think mainstream politics try to calm down the situation. But I think the real concern here is if the combination of lone wolf attacks and psychological problems and the refugee crisis, if all that comes together, that could cause a situation that is hard to control. So that sentence, that slogan we've been hearing again and again since 9/11, that you can't have 100% security. I think we will all be taken to a test now on how much insecurity we will be able to take.
Daniel Dillon-Burma, thanks so much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
To the United States now, where members of the Democratic Party are beginning to gather in Philadelphia for their national convention, which begins in just under 2 hours' time. The lead up to the event has been anything but smooth. The party chairwoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, has announced that she will resign after a leak of emails which showed senior Democrats undermine the campaign of Hillary Clinton's rival, Bernie Sanders. Well, despite the controversy, Ms Wasserman Schultz will still open and close the convention. She could be in for a tough time, though. This is the reaction she got when addressing her party's Florida delegates a little earlier.
It is so wonderful to be able to be here with my home state. All right, everybody now, settle down. Everybody settle down, please.
Well, I'd say there are reports that she might not now open the Democratic convention. In the last half an hour, Bernie Sanders has addressed his supporters in Philadelphia. Here's a little of what he said.
We have got to defeat Donald Trump. And we have got to elect Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine.
Well, that was the reaction just a short time ago. Let's cross to Nick Bryant, who is in Philadelphia for us. What do you make of that reaction? Is it perhaps understandable with Sanders supporters there?
There is so much anger amongst the supporters of Bernie Sanders. Remember, 13 million people voted for Bernie Sanders in a long and protracted and divisive and angry primary campaign that went on a lot longer than Hillary Clinton would have wanted. But Bernie Sanders has come to Philadelphia to make the peace. Indeed, he's already endorsed Hillary Clinton. They appeared in a joint campaign rally a few weeks ago in New Hampshire. But that message doesn't seem to have got through to all of his supporters. You heard some of them there booing him when he suggested they should throw their support now behind Hillary Clinton to stop Donald Trump from ever occupying the White House. And you heard again before that the reaction to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chairwoman of the DNC, who sort of fell on a sword over the weekend over these email leaks that showed that the Democratic National Committee was favouring Hillary Clinton during that primary campaign. She was supposed to gavel this convention into order in about 90 minutes' time, but it seems she's not going to do that now because they are worried that you will see before all the cameras on the convention floor the kind of reaction that she got when she addressed the Florida delegation. So, you know, these conventions are supposed to be very intricately choreographed. They're supposed to be very carefully scripted. But today, that script has just been ripped up.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard talk about an October surprise that could be coming in the direction of the Clinton team. No one knows what that is yet. But, you know, again, predictable in the sense that each campaign side will try and lob a grenade in the other camp's team at the start of their convention week. Do you think, though, that Hillary Clinton is going to be able to unite the party? She gets the formal nomination, and there's a massive raft of top-ranking speakers billed, aren't there?
She's certainly hoping that she can unify the party. Indeed, Bernie Sanders has been given a prime-time slot on opening night. He will address the convention. He will repeat that call for Democrats to join now and support Hillary Clinton. You'll have the President of the United States here on Wednesday night, Barack Obama, her kind of character witness in chief, saying that you can trust Hillary Clinton. So many people don't. And he saw her skills and her qualifications during the 4 years that she served as Secretary of State. Michelle Obama will be here. Joe Biden will be here. I mean, all the big names. Bill Clinton, Chelsea Clinton, and of course Hillary Clinton will appear herself on Thursday. She's trying to reintroduce herself to a country that knows her very well already, and that is part of the problem. People have known Hillary Clinton for 25 years. They've heard things about her for 25 years. And frankly, over the course of that time, a lot of people have got bored with the Clintons. And that's one of the problems, trying to create some enthusiasm, excitement behind her candidacy when people have seen so much of her for so many years.
I don't think anyone could say that politics is dull anywhere at the moment. Nick, thanks very much. Have a good week. We'll speak to you tomorrow. Now, after a ruling by the International Olympic Committee that it's up to the individual sporting organisations to decide on the participation of Russian athletes at the Rio Olympics, attention has turned to see how individual sports will respond. The IOC's decision also puts the onus on Rio's much-troubled anti-doping lab to make sure that drugs cheats are caught during the Games. Our Brazil correspondent Wira Davis has been given rare access to the lab, which has only just recovered its licence to operate.
Joyce Silva is a freestyle wrestler who has a real chance of winning a medal at her home Olympics in Rio. But her sport has been plagued in the past by doping, with Russian athletes among the biggest culprits. Earlier this year, dozens of Russian wrestlers were exposed as drugs cheats, and Joyce doesn't want them in Rio.
Eu penso que sim, o doping ele é uma coisa muito desleal.
Doping is completely unfair, says the Rio-based athlete. When you're fighting and losing to an opponent who's on drugs, it's soul-destroying and feels like you're being robbed. The Russian athletics squad is already banned from Rio, but the IOC has sidestepped the thorny issue of whether to suspend the entire Russian delegation, despite accusations of state-sponsored doping. The governing bodies of individual sports will now decide if Russians can compete. It all means a critical role for Brazil's new anti-doping lab, which will test 450 samples daily during the Games. But it's only just recovered its licence to operate after being accused of failing to meet international scientific standards.
The laboratory will be the most technically efficient laboratory during the Games, with all the expertise the world has in anti-doping analysis. So this will be a message for those athletes that would maybe dare to cheat for the Games or before the Games, that they will be caught.
The Olympic movement has rarely come under such scrutiny, its ideals questioned as much. But with doping such a big issue, it's vital that Rio 2016 is seen to get things right, that thousands of fans aren't shortchanged, and that the Games are as clean as possible. Pedro Solberg was denied a place at London 2012 because he was wrongly diagnosed as a drugs cheat. He says that with huge pressure on doping inspectors, there's a real danger that honest athletes could be stigmatised.
People who didn't use drugs, who didn't do anything wrong, they should not be out of the Olympics because of other people's mistakes. I know exactly how is this feeling, you know.
The pressure on the IOC to show it's serious about doping is huge, but so is the demand to let as many athletes as possible to come here and compete. Woodrow Davis, BBC News, Rio.
Now, following the failed coup attempt in Turkey on the 15th of July, the authorities have issued arrest warrants for 42 journalists. Several media outlets were closed after the attempt, but this is the first time that individual journalists have been identified. Thousands of soldiers, judges and civil servants have already been detained or placed under investigation. Prince Harry has hinted at the mental health difficulties he experienced after the death of his mother. At a charity event, the Prince spoke about the importance of opening up about personal problems. Some of Britain's most successful athletes also attended to speak frankly about their own challenges, as Peter Hunt reports.
On display at this royal barbecue, questionable cooking skills and high-profile guests who've triumphed on the sports field and who are happy to talk about their personal vulnerabilities. For former England captain Rio Ferdinand, after his wife's death, one of his challenges is helping his children grow up without their mother, as Harry has done.
And everything can be okay, but I really regret not ever talking about it. Yeah, you know, for the first 28 years of my life, never talked about it.
Harry's mother, Diana, who he once said had more guts than anybody else, died when the prince was 12 years old.
Everyone can suffer from mental health. You know, whether you're a member of the royal family, whether you're a soldier, whether you're a sports star, whether you're a team sport, individual sport, whether you're a white van driver, whether you're a mother, father, a child, it doesn't really matter. Everyone can suffer.
One of those who has suffered is the former European sprint champion Ewan Thomas, who experienced depression when injury ended his career.
I felt mentally I was weak because I'd gone from someone who was mentally tough, mentally very strong, physically strong, to someone who felt vulnerable and weak. And you're not weak, you're just going through a time in your life where if you talk to someone, hopefully they'll help you through the other side.
Kelly Holmes is another sports star now happy to talk about her past. A past that's included Olympic gold, depression and self-harming.
It's you that loses and you that wins, and you go the highs and lows, and that's the same in everyday life. And for me, I believe I've really helped myself by being far more open about it.
Coming together, communicating, helping each other are the aims of Harry, William and Kate's campaign Heads Together, which also wants to end the stigma surrounding mental health. Peter Hunt, BBC News.
A third victory for Chris Froome in the Tour de France has been celebrated across Africa. The 31-year-old was schooled in Kenya and then South Africa, where they've been basking in his extraordinary success. Our Southern Africa correspondent Karen Allen was up early to capture the mood at his former school in Johannesburg.
They say third time lucky, but Chris Froome is becoming accustomed to success. He's one of the few to have clinched the yellow jersey 3 times, and the first Briton to do so. Here at his former school in South Africa, they were celebrating today, dressed in solidarity and claiming him as their own. St John's College, rightly proud, a place where heroes are made.
It was a great feeling, man, because he was like one of us, and it's great to see how much we could become, man.
Oh, I was really excited. I'm really proud to be coming to St. John's. I'm really proud that a St. John's boy is doing such big things. And my family was watching with me, and we all stood up and cheered. It was amazing.
Exam time means the gym's empty, but the Champions Games teacher has some treasured memories of pranks played by Froome's classmates.
And we had an old prefab gym, and he obviously always used to get on one of the stationary bikes there, and he used to cycle. And of course, Scott, being the guy he was, full of fun, he would walk down there. They'd put a fan on, and then they'd throw leaves at him and pretend he was in the Tour de France.
So there you have it, Chris Froome, one of the most famous old boys from this school, and after that extraordinary win in 2013, his first Tour de France, he donated the famous yellow jerseys to his school, an inscription on it, to SJC, that's St John's College, thanks for the amazing support. Froome's alma mater is already inspiring new cycling talent in a sport where the colour of success is worn with pride. Karen Allen, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Now, it's the biggest classical music festival in the world, the BBC Proms. I was there last night, and at the heart of this year's programming are works that feature the cello. The young Argentinian cellist Sol Gabetta opened the festival with Elgar's Cello Concerto, a piece that many associate with English cellist Jacqueline du Pré. Well, during rehearsals, Gabetta spoke to us about du Pré and this season's devotion to the cello.
We are very lucky actually to have this opportunity now as a cellist, because many times when you see the seasons, for example, of an orchestra, there is maybe 20 pianists coming in a year, and there is maybe 10 violinists coming and maybe 4 cellists, you know. So to have the chances to have such a big festival just represented by the cello, I think we are all very happy, all cellists. As a young artist, or as a young new musician, let's say, in front of this composition, which was marked by Jacqueline du Pré, and her interpretation was something so unique and so her own concerto, because when I listen to the Elgar concerto, I don't know how it was before Jacqueline du Pré, but she made it possible. I feel very close to this piece. It's a very sincere piece. And of course, as you asked me about Jacqueline du Pré, everybody's thinking about, but I think it's very important just try to be anyway yourself and to go your own way. I have also made a film, it was a very interesting project because it was the first time seeing my cello used like a screen. this was the idea, to win maybe new people, younger people. And I think actually it works very well.
Sol Corbetta with Elgar. That's it. See you tomorrow.